Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the Spacebook channel, the best channel that you never heard of. For what is it? Yes, Tuesday. I have no idea what day or time it is. It has been a long day. It's Tuesday, the 6th of July, 2021. And we are here on the Spacebook channel to talk about a legend. Someone who left us yesterday. Left us with a huge body of work behind them. And lots of affection from particularly the geek fan base out there, of course, as always, but from the entertainment industry in general too. I'm going to bring on a few people in a moment. Let's bring me on first. Hello. Yes, casual stream with no background tonight. Well, I think it's a little bit like the green glow of Krypton. Yeah, kryptonite, I should say. Okay. A few people watching. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I want you to share your memories too, because we're going to be talking about a real legend this time, aren't we? It's the mighty Richard Donner, of course, the film director, writer, former actor. We're going to get into all of that as we're going along. Okay, let's bring in the man whose idea this was. First of all, I think let's bring in Ian David Diaz. Hello, mate. You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. Richard Donner is one of my favorite directors, together with Spielberg, Hitchcock, and Scorsese and the rest of the old school mob. So I was really sad when I heard that he passed yesterday.
Yeah, when the story broke, I immediately thought of you, because this is a director that we talk about quite regularly, isn't it?
Yeah. A lot of people seem to forget about Donner when they mention all the greats. They always seem to leave him out. But I've always been a fan of Richard Donner. I mean, he's directed a lot of TV. He's directed a couple of episodes of Kojak. He's written for Kojak. He's directed Twilight Zone. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't know that about the side of Richard Donner. He was he started a long time ago. And he's obviously responsible for the films that we know now, like Lethal Weapon, Superman, the Omen, and stuff like that. So yeah, it'd be nice to talk about.
I look forward to talking about all of those things over the next however long and filling in some of those blanks, because I don't know a huge amount about him, but I bet I know a man who does. He's even dressed for the part. Let's bring on Keith.
Excellent.
Keith from Media Minefield back with us again. Hello, mate. You okay?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I thought I'd wear the Superman logo with the Lethal Weapon shirt over the top. So I'm covering two of the franchises there.
Yeah, good stuff. Obviously, gathering together for occasions such as this, when somebody passes away, obviously we're really sad. Richard Donner was 91. He lived a very long and fulfilling creative life, hadn't he? So, how sad can we be? But it's not just about us sort of gathering together to kind of weep a little inside. We can celebrate this man's work, can't we, Keith?
We can indeed. Yeah, I mean, what a body of work. Much like Ian, I very much agree with what Ian's saying about how he often gets kind of overlooked for his fantastic work, but he has done some absolutely fantastic films out there. I mean, obviously everybody knows about Lethal Weapon and Superman and whatever, and his contribution to that is huge. I mean, we would not have the Zack Snyder's, films and all that today if it hadn't been for, Richard Donner making us believe a man can fly in 1978. But
he achieved, didn't he, Keith? And this was, in that instance in particular, something that many people, I think that the only other person I can think of who did something like that was Peter Jackson by bringing The Lord of the Rings to the cinema. He did something that a lot of people were convinced was impossible.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that was quite the journey for him. But obviously, apart from his successful franchises like Superman and Lethal Weapon and all that we've mentioned. I mean, there are films like, 16 Blocks and Assassins.
So much
Scrooged. And, there's so many great films in there.
I would imagine that we'll touch on most of it as the conversation rolls on. But talking about people who can seem to do the impossible, I'm going to bring on Terry Cooper. I don't think there's anything this man can't do. Hiya, Terry. Okay.
Hi, how you doing? There's quite a lot I can't do, so don't big me up too much. All right.
No, but let's just, for people who don't know, Terry, I describe you as a Renaissance man.
I guess so. It's just that I think I'm just one of these people who, I'm an artist, so anything creative is kind of I'll have a go at, So in my time, I've done novels and artwork and voiceovers and films and direction and all kinds of things, cosplay, you name it, props. So I do a bit of everything.
Cosplay.
And it's characters like Richard Donner.
Sorry, Ian. I hate the word cosplay. I usually say costuming because film departments don't have a cosplay department; they have a costume department. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Cosplay is a bit like
it is people like Richard Donner that make creative people believe, and it's not just him. We can't say he's the only one, but this is a man who started out as an actor and eventually found himself directing and writing and doing all the other stuff. I mean, this man was writing comic books or co-writing comic books in his 70s. So it's a man who seemed to just roll with it, whichever opportunity that came his way. That's inspiring as a creative, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Blimey. Like I said, putting my director cap on for a second, as someone who's directed one feature in their life, I've seen how hard it can be, and how much of you've got to be strong when you need to be, and you've got to be sort of accommodating when you need to be. And Richard Donner, from what everyone has said, from Mel Gibson onwards, he was very fair, often firm, but also very warm. And I think that's a really hard thing and the proof that he's been so successful is proof that he just got it right.
He's lucky because he came from the old school mob of directors, and he learned a lot doing. I remember William Shatner gave him a shout out yesterday saying that he doesn't remember much of the Twilight Zone episode that he directed him in, but he does remember that they had to stay 24 hours because they're running behind. So they had to film all the way through the night and finish at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, if anyone knows how to direct films or even been on a set, that's freaking hard. Do you know what I mean? So he was definitely old school, Mr. Donner, definitely.
And he'd still got plans. He'd still got projects in the pipeline as well, even though he was 90. We'll probably touch on those in a little while. But when I think about Richard Donner, I think of Americana. I think he was a populist, and I think that this was a man that was sort of steeped in every kind of popular culture from the 1950s right the way up. I think that he brought that sort of wholesome quality to most of his films, come to think of, particularly to Superman the movie. I think that's what he saw in those characters and that situation that some of the other directors who were on that project, they hadn't been able to reach somehow. I think obviously you can divide this man's career up into three chunks, can't you? There's before Superman, there's Superman, and there's after Superman. I don't think he'd mind me saying that, but there'll be a lot to get our teeth into. Sure. And I think we definitely need some American blood on the panel to do that. So we're going to bring in these segues. Look, it's late, but the segues are coming anyway. So we're going to bring in Mike from Clobbering Times, big comic book. He's former comic book retailer, now comic book YouTuber and podcaster. So we're going to bring him in now. Hiya, Mike. You okay?
Hey, well, thanks for having me, Dan. I'm honored to be on with such a great panel of great individuals. Thank you for having me here, sir.
He's taking the wrong turn, everybody. He's taking the wrong turn. You got the wrong link, Mike. You got the wrong link.
Supposed to be insulting. I'm sorry. You butcher.
You're supposed to turn at Albuquerque, mate. That's what you're supposed to turn.
So am I being over-romanticizing this there, Mike, in talking about this man and his way with American culture, or does it just look that way to us over the other side of the Atlantic?
No, sir. I would say simply as a Superman fan alone, and someone who loves Superman very dearly, I put his name in there with as far as the most important people ever connected to the character, with up there close to with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, Mort Weisinger, Julia Schwartz, Kurt Swan. There are a few people that are the most important people ever connected to Superman, and the most important person ever connected to Superman that was not in the comic book industry, although he did co-write a few things with Jeff Johns later, is undeniable. It's not even arguable. It's Richard Donner. But he also paid his dues long before he did that film and directed, as has been pointed out, so many television shows over the years. what a great career he had even there. Some of my favorite shows, my all-time, arguably the greatest Western that show ever made, Have Gun Will Travel. One of the greatest shows ever, Twilight Zone, as Ian mentioned, and many, many other shows.
I hear he was on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and things like that. Sort of any kind of populist show that was coming up around through the mid to late 60s, Keith. It's quite impressive, his track record, isn't it? I suppose you could say that Spielberg kind of did something similar, maybe not over quite such a protracted period of time, but Donner paid his dues, didn't he?
Banana Splits.
Banana Splits. That was Danger Island. Banana Splits had a live action, silly little action show on there. I was so shocked when someone mentioned that yesterday. I thought I was the only one that remembered Danger Island.
I remembered.
So let's get this out of the way, because have you noticed that when somebody passes away, when somebody famous, there is always this thing where people reach out to find the most obscure thing they possibly can about them. How on earth was Richard Donner connected to the Banana Splits? So, Mike, this was a specific strand of Banana Split. He didn't create the show, I take it.
No, Sid and Marty Krofft had a bunch of shows in the 70s, and they weren't animated, although they had an animated feature here and there. And they always involved people in suits like this. And there was Sigmund the Sea Monster, there was H.R. Puffin stuff, Lidsville, and then there was the Banana Splits. And they had different segments. There was actually an animated segment and a couple of live action little segment shows that these silly little guys in the costumes would, in between their little playing music and stuff, would introduce these little shows for the Saturday morning audience. And one of them was Danger Island. And it was, wow.
Unforgettable by the sounds of it. We got those shows over here in the UK, but we got them like years later, didn't we, Terry? Do you remember all that stuff?
I remember the Banana Splits definitely from my. I must have been under 5 years old, but I can remember it. Thing. Here's a stupid little aside. My only connection to the Banana Splits really is in about 1991. There was a rave tune, a techno rave tune that came out on an independent label called the Banana Song, right?
Okay.
It was tra la la la, and I helped write that. It got 39.
See what I mean? He says that I was bigging him up. This bloke has done everything. He's been a rock star, a voice artist.
I just regenerate a lot. That's what it is.
Terry, is that the one they used in the first Kick-Ass film where they used the Banana Split song? Was it that one?
I don't think so. This one was on a very small independent label. It got to 39 in the charts. I don't know if they used the same one. I'll have to go back. But the song was called the Banana Song, and the group was called GSP.
I remember it. I remember it really, really well. Now, we're going to bring on somebody else now. I wonder if she remembers it. This is Wendology. She's not been on the channel before, but we asked for people to put their hands up if they want to come and speak and pay tribute to Richard Donner. So, yeah, we're going to bring her on. Here she is.
Hello, Wendy.
Hi, Wendy. You okay?
Yes, thank you. Evening, everybody.
Here we are. Another UK person, but
yes, I have to admit, I have a little bit of a foot in, or a lot of a foot in the US side of things, because I grew up in the States, but I've lived in the UK for probably about 13, 14 years now. So when you were just now talking about the Banana Splits, I can remember when I was very young watching that on Saturday morning telly, and that was such a big part of my childhood. And it's one of those things that just stays with you. There's certain things that you don't remember at all. And then there's other shows that any little sound, any familiar sound, like the song and things like that, it just brings back all those memories. And that was that was such an entertaining show.
Mm-hmm.
I think with something, a killer theme tune always helps, doesn't it? And there is that thing where it's all very, very scary. But I'm not that surprised that Richard Donner was involved in that somewhere along the line when I think about some of his later films. Because this is a man who worked in pretty much every genre going, didn't he, Ian?
Yeah, he did. He worked TV, worked movies, he did comics. Superman the movie was Omen was the thing that really a lot of people focused him on, I guess, movie wise. And then Superman the movie I even remember being in the cinema when Superman saved the helicopter and everybody in the audience just got on their feet and was cheering. Those were the days of cinema, right? And, Richard Donner's always been a favorite of mine. He's never mentioned, though, this is the thing, that I always wondered about when they mentioned great directors. They never mentioned Richard Donner. And one of my favorite films of Richard Donner, I mean, a lot of people say Omen, Superman, blah, 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 is 16 Blocks. I love 16 Blocks. That's so well directed, so well paced, and brilliant performance by Bruce Willis and everyone involved. And, as I said, right, he should be celebrated, Richard Donner, because he was brilliant at what he did, and he was a very talented man.
That was his very last film as well. I mean, when I think back to, I was looking back across his filmography, Keith, and it struck me there was a couple of films that I think I'd forgotten he directed. Conspiracy Theory, I think, is a prime example. And Maverick, both star Mel Gibson. Yeah, no,
which is great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Maverick was kind of fun to sort of go and revisit that sort of classic TV Western and bring it to the big screen. And of course, they had a couple of in Lethal Weapon jokes and whatever thrown in that film. But here's the thing: when we talk about, you were saying earlier about the atmosphere he created with many of his films and the working relationships that Mel Gibson, for example, had with him. When people nowadays talk about the Fast and Furious franchise, for example, they always talk about how, regardless of all the spectacle and all of that stuff, the central theme of those films, particularly the latter ones, are about family and the sense of family that they all have. But I actually think that Richard Donner did this first with the Lethal Weapon films. Those films, for all of the action and the spectacle, quite a bit of it was Riggs's character being accepted by Murtaugh's family and that very strong family unit and that sort of thing. So I kind of feel that Donner did that first. And obviously, a lot of people saying that that's what the new action franchise Fast and Furious is about. But I would argue that Lethal Weapon was too. That's just my view.
I think that I described him as a populist, and I think that all of his films, obviously some of them are higher certificate than others that you wouldn't show to a child, but I think that there isn't anything in there that's gratuitous in any way. It's all story-led. There's some sort of warmth to all of it. There's nothing nihilistic in his output. I mean, he could even say with the Omen, you've got a mother, a father, and a child at the centre. Okay, it goes a little pear-shaped, but it is very much about that family, isn't it? Yeah. And obviously the Goonies. I mean, probably one of the ultimate sort of family fantasy films. Yeah. So when I think about the Lethal Weapon stuff, I know exactly what you mean. And there's that playful. It's got a hard edge, but it's very, very playful. I think all of his films are playful, and maybe that's why he was not in the wilderness as such, but maybe that's why he gets forgotten, Ian, because he's not a Tarantino or whatever else. I'm going to bring in a couple more people now. We've got this is Scott, who's, I can't remember the name of his channel, but it's not long started, and it's a gaming channel. But yeah, Scott's just joined us on YouTube. Hi, Scott. Where is he? There he is.
Good afternoon.
Hi. So are you a big Richard Donner fan as well? Where are you joining us from? And are you a big Richard Donner fan?
I'm near Toledo, Ohio, and yes, I'm a huge Richard Donner fan, huge Superman, and also a huge Lethal Weapon fan. I am not too old for more Lethal Weapon.
Same here.
So, I have the same collection that I saw earlier, and then my wife just this past Christmas she got me. I have that set, and I have the Blu-ray set, and the director's cut. Oh wow, there's a lot of great stuff on there. I was just so thrilled to, especially there was the scene in the very first movie where he gets called to the playground, and where there's that live shooter, and I wish they would have included that in the actual theatrical cut, because you actually see that not only does Mel Gibson's character Riggs not care about at that time his own life, but he's like, I'm going to rush in there, kind of Superman-like, and take care of this bad guy. Whether he's bulletproof or not, he's going to do that. And that may be an odd comparison, considering that Donner had a hand in Superman, and of course Riggs's development. I was just so blown away no pun intended. So blown away when I found out yesterday that Richard passed away, and I was very disappointed.
The age that most of us, I think, probably are. I mean, I'm in my late 40s. I don't mind admitting that. I grew up. I look at his filmography, and I see a streak of films that I grew up watching, and I think that it was probably only around 10, 12 years ago that I realised that it was the same guy who'd made them all. He seemed to be kind of under the radar. He seemed, for somebody who worked with all these big movie stars and was always pushing on and on and on, he seemed like a very, very modest man. And it was just sort of on to the next project, Terry. Can you relate to that?
Oh yeah, well, I'm a little older than you, and like you said, I think it was Ian who just said that he sort of belonged to the old school of film directors, where it wasn't about making the director a big star. It was more like being a master at your craft and churning out good film after good film after good film, and not so much about the ego, more about my work speaking for myself. So all his work spoke for itself, and it was. He was kind of invisible in that way because, all of us now have obviously seen other stuff that he's done apart from the big things like Superman, which put his name on the map, and The Omen. But yeah, it's when you look at his body of work now, it's a shame that he had to pass for us and many other people to kind of look a bit closer to it and appreciate it. But just to see, the amount of hits he had, the amount of solid, well-produced and directed movies, incredible.
And images that sort of they don't just sort of become sitting tenants in your mind. They seem to represent something bigger. And he was doing this from the earliest days of his career. I mean, this I'm not a big Twilight Zone guy. I've only seen a fraction of the episodes, but this is this one and the one with Burgess Meredith are kind of the big two, and that image, it's been parodied so many times. You know the one I mean, though, Mike. So, so to be able to do this so many times, it can't have been by accident, can it? This is a man who really knew his craft.
Oh, for sure.
When they did, was it Third Rock from the Sun, and William Shatner was guest starring in it, and him and what's his name was on the plane. Him and Lithgow was on the plane.
Oh yeah,
and he
Lithgow,
looks
the remake.
at the thing, and he goes, "There's a thing on the plane," and he goes,
You get that too?
Yeah.
That was an
really
iconic
funny.
moment for those.
Someone on the wing, something on the wing.
I'm going to have to go back and rewatch that now.
Yeah,
it does make you want to do that. Every time we talk about one of these films, Wendy, you think, "Oh, I'll go and watch that one now. I'll go and watch this one." Which Richard Donner film will you go and rewatch first?
One of the films that he did that had a huge impact on me when I saw it was Lady Hawk.
Oh,
It's a very under
Rated.
sort of rated, under appreciated film, I think. It was a very, very young Matthew Broderick, possibly his very first big film role. Rutger Hauer and Michelle Pfeiffer, who was also very young then. And it was a beautiful film because it sort of just left you with that feeling after that you had just lived through a complete fairy tale. He was able to just totally transport you away. And it really stayed with me, that film. And I was actually, when I heard that he'd passed, I was thinking, my God, his name is so synonymous with so many years of my life and things that I've enjoyed, that when I had a little ramble through, his filmography in IMDb earlier, as you said, Dan, I was just so amazed at how many things he has been involved in that have impacted me throughout my whole life, really. It's just incredible how long he was in that business.
We surround ourselves with sort of memories and memorabilia of a lot of this stuff, or certainly the films themselves on disc. I'm going to bring in somebody else now as well. This is our final guest for the night. It's a crowded stream, but quite a cozy little snug, I think. This is PJ. This is PJ Maybe. PJ Maybe from over on YouTube too. Hi guys. PJ. Okay.
PJ. Good afternoon, PJ.
So where are you joining us from, PJ?
The
Scotland.
Up in
I'm
Scotland.
in Scotland, and that is my Donner movie. That is one of my. he does 2 of my top 10. They're very high up, and the Goonies is my favourite.
2 out of your top 10 films of all time, are we talking?
Yes. Superman. Superman's got very emotional tie for me. Believe it or not, it was the second movie my father ever took us to the pictures to see. So he set my movie going love.
Yeah.
The way I go to the movies, the way I took my kids to the movies, it was my father that did it. First one was The Empire Strikes Back, and the second one was Superman. And because of that, I had a love of movies. And so I always remember Superman for that. But The Goonies is one of my favourites. I love it. I'm a chunky.
Ian, that must be similar to you, hadn't it?
No, no. The only film I didn't like of Richard Donner's was The Goonies. I never really liked The Goonies. I tried to watch it again, and I watched it recently as an adult and didn't like it. When I was a kid, I didn't like it, and now as an adult, I didn't like it. Yeah, I'm being honest here. I didn't really. No,
I actually meant more the fact that this would have kick-started going to the cinema when you were young. In fact, with most of us, kick-starts a love of movies and a curiosity about movie making. I mean, it's the same for Ian and Terry. I think you probably both feel that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And as I said to Ian in the past, that if we all liked the same things, it would be boring. There would be one movie to watch.
and there is something for everybody in the back catalogue of Richard Donner. It has to be said. I mean, one of my earliest movie memories. Now, I had a VHS recorder in the house from when I was about 8 or 9, and so we were early adapters to all of that. But I had an older stepbrother. And whilst I wanted to keep sniggering, so you probably know where I'm going to go with this. So, Keith, I wanted to watch things like, Superman and Superman 2, but he was always going for the video nasties and all that kind of thing that was just on the crest of being banned. But but of course, he was about 15 when I was, say, 8 or 9 or something like that. And he would continually bring back all these films that we weren't supposed to see. And a great many of them freaked me out beyond belief. I barely got 10 minutes into them. But the one film that he brought back that I was able to watch the whole way through, and I think it was just scary enough that it didn't freak me out too bad, was The Omen from 1976. So here's Gregory Peck and Patrick Troughton being shot by Richard Donner there, somewhere that would have been on the Thames, I think, Keith.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I believe so. But I mean, much the same as you, actually, the first 2 movies I ever saw as a child that my mum took me to see, they were in the same year as well, actually, was Star Wars and Superman the movie. So that was definitely my introduction into becoming a movie fan. And obviously a movie maker eventually. And I was the same as you. I grew up in that VHS era, which I'm really pleased to have been part of, actually. And we would go to the video store and hire things. And I think the first time I ever saw The Omen was probably on a video rental version that I shouldn't have been watching, but I managed to see and was freaked out as well. So it did the job. And I think this is the thing, like you were saying with him, maybe the reason he gets overlooked or used to get overlooked was because rather than being an auteur that would sort of, if you like, make movies of a set style in a certain genre, he was an incredibly competent filmmaker, but he really did cover all of the genres, everything from a supernatural horror like The Omen to science fiction to fantasy, as Wendy mentioned, through to action films and comedies. He did it all, really. And I think, that's a testament to how great he was, but also maybe one of the reasons that he wasn't necessarily a name that everybody would say when they went through great film directors, and maybe it's for that reason, perhaps.
So to have that success. Sorry,
no, I was just going to say you couldn't slot him into one genre, and I quite agree. That's probably why a lot of people overlooked him.
Also, he wasn't a lot on, I think when he was coming up, there wasn't so many EPKs available to the public. you know, in
so
those
remind
days.
us what an EPK is. Then,
electronic press kit. Basically, EPK is when they interview the director, actors, and stuff, and they send them to TV studios and they put it out. So if they have a show, they can show a clip from the movie or an interview with the director, whatever. So they're put on tape and then they were sent to TV stations, whatever, or so they can play them. But as I said, in those days when he was making films, EPKs were available, but they weren't available to the public. It's not like we've got YouTube now and everything else. And I think so if you compare him to Spielberg was always being interviewed. His presence was always seen on TV when he from Raiders of the Lost Ark to Schindler's List to everything. And I think Donner, he kind of he avoided all that stuff. That's why if you mention Richard Donner I don't know, if I mention Richard Donner to my mum, she wouldn't know who he is. But if I mention Spielberg to my mum will know who Spielberg is and Hitchcock. So, but the thing is, I think Keith's right, you know, and PJ, he made loads of different genres, and that just goes to show how great a director he is. He could be slotted into any kind of genre and make that film work, you know.
A question I meant to ask, Dan. See the Burgess Meredith one in the Twilight Zone, is that the library one?
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
That's one of my favourites as well. There you go.
Yeah. I think we've managed to keep this conversation going for half an hour already without mentioning too much about Superman. But I think we can talk about it a little bit now. But while you're just talking about interviews and press kits, I thought we'd have a little word from the man himself here. So let's hear Richard talk about Superman.
I understand there's some mention in the commentary that they were looking at Paul Newman, Robert Redford, which sounds hilarious to me.
It is.
How can you talk about some of the possibilities and how that was handled and how you managed to get the man you got?
Well, that was before I came on board.
I see.
They were preparing this film for 2 years, but when I came on board, I wanted an unknown because I thought it'd be pretty tough convincing an audience to see Redford in a Superman suit flying. Not that he's not a great actor, but then I figured an unknown could make it work. So for me, it was pretty simple. The casting was tough, but it was pretty simple. The idea that somewhere out there, and when we met Chris Reeve, you'd never think of him as Superman because he was 20 some odd or 30 some odd pounds lighter than he was when he played the role, and he had kind of a honey brown hair and everything. But he was an actor, and he convinced me that he could play.
Brando aboard, and I understand Chris Reeve was dying to do a line with Mr. Brando. Talk about a little bit about that relationship.
Well, Chris Reeve was a very special. Forgetting the fact he was an actor, he was really a special kid, special guy. I loved him. He was a very good friend.
So, yeah, Superman the movie had been bubbling up for quite a while with Warner Brothers. Stars and directors and writers got through quite a few of them before landing with Richard Donner like this. And he managed to take, I think, really quite a troubled production. I don't think anybody had a clear line of sight through to getting them to achieve their goal. But Donner seemed to bring with him a clarity and a confidence that I suppose a man who at the time would have been in his early to mid 40s with a few successes under his back. I think it was probably the right project at the right time. It was synergy, complete synergy. What do you think about that, Ian?
I adore this film. I mean, even though the story didn't make any sense when he turned back the earth, I thought that was a bit daft. But I like the idea that he split the movie up. So he had the beginning bit, which was, you know, in Krypton, and that was a completely different way of directing and lighting. Then he was, you know, in Smallville.
And he conceived of that idea, didn't he? The idea to do a film that would basically be, to do a story, to tell a story that would be told over two really quite long theatrical films.
He had three. So he had three. He split the film into three. He had Krypton, and then he had Smallville, which was lit differently as well, which was a different kind of performance by everybody. And then we went to Metropolis, and we had a bit of comedy and lots of action and Superman, of course, and that wonderful scene where he saves the helicopter. But that just goes to show, because if it was any other director, it would have been camp as Batman 60s. But Richard Donner wanted it to be straight. He kept saying that, I want this film to be straight, and that's what he did. And it was an amazing film in the end of the day, you know.
It gave us the most iconic Superman.
He did.
He rescued it actually from the Mario Puzo script. The Mario Puzo script was extraordinarily campy and long and awful.
Oh, really?
And Tom Mankiewicz worked on it a bit, but really Richard Donner said, this is just not, we're going to treat this character with respect because this is the most legendary, most iconic superhero, and you should treat him with respect. That's Donner. This film would have been horrific without Donner.
Do you think it was because he grew up reading the character as well, Mike?
I think it's a lot of it. He did read the character. He was a fan of the character. I don't know if he was a huge fan or whatever, but he did know the character, but he respected the character. You know, and again, the Salkinds do nothing about the character. They're just going to get those rights, and it's a shame they were able to get those rights, but they did make one good move, and that was getting Donner, because without him, we wouldn't be talking about this film right now.
Oh, and then how they stabbed him in the back. And
but did they ever?
And then handed it off to someone else. Luckily for all of us, we were able to get the Donner cut of Superman 2.
Eventually.
And what a fantastic film that is. In kind of a way, that was like our first redemption of getting a film that should have normally come out, kind of like Justice League. Now, I'm not going to compare those two films because that is not apples and oranges, by any means. But interestingly, I was going to say earlier to a different point that when I was a kid and I saw Superman turning the world back, I was going, okay, this is great. As a kid, I was thinking, yeah, he's saving Lois Lane, and okay, I'm a softie at heart. Sometimes I may not act as such, but when you see Superman's rage, that he lost Lois Lane, and then he just, who could do that but Chris Reeve? And then he, when he takes off into the sky. But recently I heard somebody say this, that it wasn't so much that Superman was turning back time for the entire planet, and that the entire planet was spinning backward, but it was he himself who was going through time.
That's exactly right.
And when I heard that, it really changed my view of that part of the film, because that was the only part of the film when I became an adult I said, I don't know about this. Yeah. But now I was just like, oh, so
how I've always looked at it. I mean, Wendy, I'm going to ask you about this, because franchises now, here we are now in the 21st century, we're used to franchises, and somebody tells a story like this, using a character like this, an intellectual property as big as Superman, and we expect it's going to become a franchise that potentially it'll go on to have a sequel and another sequel and maybe 3 or 4 other sequels. But I think here we had something, even though he'd conceived it to be told across the 2 movies, how I've always seen it is that what they tried to do with this film, it's as if this was the only Superman story that was ever going to be brought to the big screen, they were going to tell the biggest one they possibly could with the biggest stakes and have it go global, intergalactic almost, and then take it right inside him, which is what happens with Superman 2, with Zod and his relationship with Lois. But I think that it was structured almost like a 2-act play.
That's an interesting point. It's been a very, very long time since I've seen the original Superman, but and I don't think I actually saw the second film, because I don't have any memory of that one at all. But I can remember the impact that the first one made, and I think the reason that one of the big reasons that it was so successful, going back to something that was said earlier, is that Donner had a very sensitive side to him. He was able to bring out such humanity in a character, in Chris Reeve's character as Superman. Here you have this character that can do anything, can reverse time, and yet he was so down to earth. He's
basically a god, yeah.
And yet he was a very sensitive character. He was a very kind-hearted character, and I think that may have very well come from Donner's influence, because reading about Richard Donner a little bit, about his likes and his dislikes and things that he was very passionate about, suggests to me that he was a very sensitive soul, really. And I think that really, really comes out in the first Superman film.
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
His motto was verisimilitude for everything that was on screen.
And what does that mean, Keith? What does that word?
It just means a sense of believability, a sense of
the likelihood that something can be true.
Exactly. So in that very statement, "You'll believe a man can fly," for example,
that sort of sums it all up.
And that was really the mantra, not only to the actors but to the visual effects crew and everything. And I know that was something that he used to use as his mantra on everything.
See, what you're saying there as well, there was wee silly things in the movie that brought that across. Like, for instance, when I was younger, I was picky as I am now. So, like, for instance, when he was turning back time, that was silly. But as I grew older, I put it as a metaphor of him going back in time.
Yeah, that's what I view it as. I think it's very romantic.
But there's also the ones where Superman's standing on the ground, somebody's trying to pick him up or push him over, and he doesn't move. And I thought, he's too heavy. But the next shot, he's standing in the air exactly the same way. So that, to me, that actually gave the impression that he's not standing on the ground. He's just standing just above the ground. So the height, his weight isn't getting dragged down, because that's one of the things I thought, if people can't move him, his weight would just drag him down. But next scene, he's standing in air exactly the same way. With the guy falling the burglar, remember? He's just standing there. And I thought, well, that makes it a lot more clearer, because he can stand where he wants. It's not necessarily, doesn't take me out of the scene that he's standing on the ground and I'm sitting there thinking he's too heavy, he would fall down because of his weight and stuff like that. And I thought, no, that sort of plays it. It makes it real.
Two things that Donner did, right, that the other Superman films didn't do. One is Richard Donner was very adamant that Clark Kent would be very different to Superman. Hence why Chris Reeves came up with the bumbling Clark Kent.
His body language is totally different. The way he walks is different, isn't it?
So if you look at all the Superman films after Superman, all of them are the same. You know, you got what's his name, Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, and he plays Clark Kent exactly like the way he plays Superman, which doesn't make any sense to me. The second thing was that he was, as Keith said about that word, he wanted things to be real, even to the point when he caught Lois Lane. So Lois Lane falls off the building, and when he catches her, he doesn't catch her like this, go straight up and catch her like that, otherwise he'd break her back. He basically, when she's falling, he falls with her, catches her, slows down the speed, and then goes back up again, which is, if you had that power, that's what you would do. So Richard Donner even went to that extent to try and make it as real as possible.
They did something about that, and was it The Big Bang Theory? If Superman caught her like that, she would be split into three because it was going. But as you said, it basically, they give you that bit more believability where he's coming down and slowing and going back up, rather than just like in a lot of these movies where they just suddenly go, shoot, catch, you're falling that fast, you suddenly stop and you're all fine.
Yeah. And for my money, that scene is one of the most iconic scenes in all of film history. And you know, the softy in me, every time I see that scene, my wife will tell you, if she were here right now, she would say, "Oh yeah, he tears up every time."
That's probably the most important scene in the film, really. Yeah. That's the most important.
One of the best taglines.
It's the most important.
Who's got you?
That's arguably the most important scene in this. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dan.
No, you carry on, Mike. Carry on.
I was just going to say that's arguably the most important scene in the film, because this is the first super deed we get to see him perform, and first meeting Lois. And you have to sell that. That has to be spectacular and memorable, and it turns out to be one of the most memorable scenes in cinema history that really propels the movie big time right there. And it is key. If you look at it, I don't mind Superman and Lois that much as a show. It's okay here and there. Look how they meet in that. It's so boring. Because they actually showed it.
I mean,
their first meeting is boring. In this, it's memorable.
It has to be accepted that for all that we talk about these enormous visual moments, and my God, Christopher Reeve was a big man, heroic. He's exactly how you'd wish Superman to look. And when you see him stood against all those skyscrapers, he looks like a monument in himself. But Terry, for all that, I mean, you're somebody who works with special effects quite a lot, aren't you? But the truth is, I mean, for all that Richard Donner clearly had a vision for that side of the film, the casting of the first Superman movie, assembling those particular actors in those specific parts, I'm thinking of Margot Kidder in particular as Lois Lane, that was just as important, if not more, than all the other visual kicks with it, than the Fortress of Solitude and things like that. I mean, he didn't seem to put a foot wrong with this film.
No, and I think the one thing as I've reminded myself about, and we all kind of have this sort of, we see his career in hindsight now, but for that time, for 1976, there was no cookie cutter formula for making a superhero movie. There was no superhero landings on this is how you make someone fly, and this is how someone smashes through a wall, and this is how someone spins around at high speed.
Yeah.
There was none of that. So he had to invent that entire language, because before that we had Adam West's Batman. Love him, bless him. But this was bringing the verisimilitude into it, bringing a superhero into it wasn't a stylistic 1940s metropolis. It was for all intents and purposes modern day, to the point where, the late 70s, he steps out of the changing from the telephone box, and the black guy comes up and goes, "Hey, Jack," and he loves the outfit. He's like, "Excuse me," and he just, but he just keeps it really real. And the casting of Brando was a bit of stunt casting to try and raise the awareness of it. Obviously, it was like, oh, Marlon Brando is the greatest actor of our generation kind of thing at the time. But to stick to his guns and not cast Robert Redford, Paul Newman, Burt Reynolds without a moustache was one of the choices as well. Could you imagine? We couldn't imagine it now. It's probably unfair to say, because if Burt Reynolds had been Superman from there on, we would have gone, what a great job he did. Or maybe we wouldn't. But Christopher Reeve, and it was right. I mean, I think that casting of going for an unknown to play such an iconic character was kind of echoed in the casting of Michael Keaton as Batman, because he was a sort of more of a comedic actor, a lot smaller. And they were like, well, let's put this superhero, let's give him a brand new face. So they had Michael Keaton and to a certain extent Chris Evans as Captain America. Before Chris Evans was cast as Captain America, everyone was talking about Matt Damon and Brad Pitt, as choices. But let's go back a bit. Let's try not to think about the Fantastic Four movies, which I love. I will go on record as saying that I love those movies. But Chris Evans was kind of off the radar, really. He had the two Fantastic Four movies had sort of
somehow he made us instantly forget them.
But no, again, I do love the Fantastic Four movies, mainly for Johan Griffith, who's a fellow Welshman. But no, Christopher Reeve, to this day, regardless of how effects have moved on and techniques have moved on. There are not many people who will choose someone else over Christopher Reeve when you think of Superman, because he looks like him. He looks like the drawing come to life, doesn't he?
Terry, see what you're saying there about the choice of either a famous actor or an unknown. They did it with the Judge Dredd movie, Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
They initially were going to cast an unknown. Could you imagine the difference that type of movie would have been if they that? Because when they cast Sylvester Stallone, they decided to make it a Sylvester Stallone movie rather than.
Do you think, PJ?
Imagine that. I think if they cast a well-known actor,
you'd be watching
Superman,
Dredd, wouldn't you?
You would be watching Dredd with that. But if you imagine if they cast a known actor as Superman, they would be changing it to fit his character, because it's the actor's character would be slightly more important to fit the role rather than.
So, PJ, are we talking about a time in filmmaking where maybe studios trusted directors a little more? So, we don't know this guy, but we trust you. Go with that.
Yeah,
here's a ton of money to make this happen.
And then when they started doing that, when the actors became so big that the movie was less important, whereas they went for the perfect one, they went for Christopher Reeves. You can imagine any other character in that role, but how would they change it to fit that actor? And that's where it would start changing how the movie would, if they'd put in any one of the ones you've named, would they want to act as goofy as Clark Kent?
It's true. If you put someone that's well known into an iconic character, it becomes that well known actor rather than the actual character itself. And Richard Donner knew it. He knew it. He was up against the Silkines because they wanted someone famous to play Superman, but Richard Donner knew better, didn't he? So I think they tolerated him all the way through that whole year when they were in production with Superman, and they were just waiting for the right moment to kick his ass out of the production.
Because he shot everything, didn't he? There's a 3-hour cut of this movie, which
I watched that last night.
It's known as the TV version, is it, Mike?
I've got it.
Two different ones. I watched the extended cut last night. That's 3 hours. And then there was an ABC special edition that was aired over 2 nights, and they're very different.
Is that it?
Is it in that set then, Keith?
Yeah, and I mean theatrical as well.
That set has the theatrical, the slightly longer home media release, and the Donner cut, but it doesn't have the TV cut. That's on a separate disc, which I've also got. But
can I ask the panel a question? Right, I can tell you. All right, so the question is, right, when was the first time you saw? Because in those days, you saw a clip from the movie. I can tell you, the first time I saw a clip from the movie was the scene when they showed it on News at 10, which is like a news bulletin they have in England, right? And it was the clip they were reporting on Superman, and they showed it when Superman landed in the street, and he told everybody to get back, and he spins and he goes into the thing. And then they cut it off, and that's the moment when as a kid, I was like this. I've got to see this movie.
That clip was all over the UK in the 70s.
That's the one I saw.
Yeah.
And do you know the weirdest thing about that is, you remember the Dean Cain Superman when he was taking he was doing the spinning and he was pretending to be the Mask. See, when I saw that, all I thought was the Mask was pretending to be Superman because of that clip, the spinning around.
Do you know what? I think the thing about that clip, why that clip was chosen, because the tagline for the film was "You will believe a man can fly," which was a big ask.
Big statement.
The public were like, really? Because everyone's expecting a guy on wires, and you were expecting to see the wires. I think even me, I was like 6 or 7, whatever, thinking it's going to be a guy on strings, But when you saw him fly, Christopher Reeve had this natural lightness of the landing he did. I know it was shot in the dark, that scene, and he landed so gracefully.
Yeah,
not like oof. Oh my! He just landed really gently, as if he was in complete control, and he just went. Get back, everybody! Blah, did the spinning, and it blew everyone's mind. It's like I've never seen a man fly.
I must admit, because I had seen the original with Reeves, I always expected him to do the landing they did then, where he jumps from a height and lands as if he's just landing.
George Reeves.
George Reeves. When he always landed,
and in the cartoons as well,
as a kid, he jumped in from a window as that was him landing, and I always found it funny that. Even I could tell he was jumping in from somewhere height to pretend he was landing. But that was the thing that I thought they were going to do. But as you said, it was the same as when they did the Superwoman movie, which wasn't great, but it gave that. I think they used the same idea. It looked graceful when he was landing, as if just normal. Here you go. I don't need to do
the same fictional universe. Scott, have you got an answer to that question? Ian's question: what's the first scene of this film you remember seeing?
I think I remember seeing, because I never saw the original film in the theater when I was a kid. But I remember seeing an advert for it, and I believe it was him catching Lois and catching the helicopter. But I
Really?
remember
Yeah, that's a belter.
Yeah, but interestingly, my parents, because I was a big Superman fan, Superman, you know, and I watched, you know, the Justice League Superman Super Friends show on television on ABC when I was a kid, and I remember I had glasses when I was a kid, and my second pair of glasses had the Superman symbols like right here on the and so my mother
Gee, Lois.
when we were going to church. Well, at that time, I was like, okay, you know, I don't feel so geeky now. I have these Superman things on my glasses, and so my mom and my dad and we were going to church, and I don't know, I might have been about 7 or 8 years old, and I had the glasses in my hand, and somehow I was goofing around. My mom closed the car door, and it smashed my hand. Oh. And she's like, "Oh, are you okay? You're okay." And I'm crying. My hand wasn't hurt or anything, but my glasses were destroyed.
Oh,
and I'm like, Superman glasses. But it wasn't too long after that Superman 2 was in the theater, and that's, you know, they're like, you know, I'm like, let's go see this movie, and I'm like, I have no idea what this stuff is about. I had no idea who General Zod was. I knew nothing, but I was like, I have to see this because I'm a wee kid. So, but yeah, I remember seeing that. That helicopter scene, and I think that's why it ends up, you know, being so touching to me even now. And the music, John Williams and the music, that brings it all together.
For me, it was another scene of daring do. I remember very, very vividly it's the scene where he flies down in a sort of curve like that, and you see him. There's a train coming in the one direction, sort of over your shoulder like that, and he flies down, coming in the other direction, and then assumes the position of where this sort of section of the railway has been broken, plants himself there, sort of lowers the main part of his body into the track, doesn't he? And sort of lifts his one arm to create a perfect joint so the train can drive across him. That's the very first scene I ever saw from Superman the movie. How about you, Keith? Which one was yours?
Oh, well, gee, Lois. Well, put this way, it certainly wouldn't have been the clip Ian mentioned on News at 10, because that would have been way past my bedtime because I was very young. But no, I think actually prior to actually seeing the film, which, as I said, my mum took me to see, and I thought was amazing. I did remember thinking when I watched the film, though, when are we going to see Superman? Because I wasn't as patient then as a child, you know. But I used to get a magazine here in the UK called Look-In. Don't know whether anyone remembers.
I do, yeah. Look-In.
And it had the front cover had a picture of Christopher Reeve running as Superman. And then it had sort of the big picture behind it was Clark Kent with the glasses and whatever. And that was the first sort of image that stuck in my mind before I actually saw the film. But I don't know about clips. I don't remember seeing any clips before seeing the film.
There used to be a show called Screen Test. There used to be a show called Screen Test on children's BBC, where they would quiz school kids about movies of the day, or they would tease them about what was going to come, and they would ask them to sort of observe sort of how many people were stood in the crowd around Superman when he did the corkscrew thing into the pavement. Little things like that. How about you, Mike? How old were you when this film came out, and what was the first thing you ever saw about it?
Boy, am I old, because I was 14. And in the years leading up to that, DC Comics have been putting there was a contest you could win a couple of years earlier to be in the film. Someone won that contest and got to be in the film. And so leading up to it, we didn't have any kind of clips, shows, or anything. I remember in December of '78 when it was released, going the first night. But before that, only seeing these very ominous commercials that would play the music, and it would show like. It never didn't show any characters, showed nothing but a moving screen with a beautiful image on it saying, "You will believe a man can fly." And other than seeing a few pictures here and there in the back of DC Comics, didn't get to see very much. So when I went 18 times to the theater to see it in 1978. That's how fanatical I was over it. And I think I knew I was sold when that big, gigantic, beautiful S blasted onto the screen to that John Williams score. I've never been affected by a movie, a bit of a film in my life like I was as sitting there 14 years old, waiting for this movie for 4 or 5 years, and just being blown away by that scene. So, but we didn't get a lot of clips before that.
Right. And that teaser trailer is on the Blu-ray, by the way. That teaser trailer that you mentioned.
yeah.
Where
I watch those. So, Wendy, you said it's been a while since you've seen this film, but can you remember the first time you ever saw a moment from it? This film that's chocker full of so many spectacular sights.
Yeah, like a couple of people have mentioned, I can't really remember seeing any clips beforehand, like the ones that were described, but I just have fleeting images of remembering back then seeing it for the first time. And definitely I have a vision of there was a scene where he, as you mentioned earlier, he was landing and he just did it so gracefully. And I can remember that. But and some of the other scenes, that have stayed with me, but I can't really recall an actual clip that I saw, but I do remember that byline, "You will believe a man can fly." I do remember that.
Yeah.
Whether
I believe it was on one of the posters.
It
Oh
was.
yes,
maybe that's what it was. Yeah. That probably sticks out.
I feel dead old because I was actually 14 when I saw it first, when it first came out.
When I was going to school,
You're
I
14
used to come out the tube station, and it's the first time I saw the poster, and it was the little S in the clouds and the rainbow going through it, and it just said, "You believe a man can fly," and that was enough for me to get so excited about the film. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Superman 4 is where we were believing no. Because I will never forget here a couple of years ago, I don't know why I decided to watch it because I knew it was bad. Christopher Reeve even was like, "Oh, I can't believe we did this movie." And you can see the wires and you can see the backdrop on the moon. And I'm going, "No, Chris, no."
Well, obviously, Richard Donner moved on from Superman, not entirely of his own free will. But the film was a massive success, and its place in the isn't it? Hasn't it got a big preservation order on it now? Does anybody know anything about that? What's this thing? Films get inducted, don't they, into a special sort of American Hall of Fame almost just for movies where they get preserved, the original negative.
Yeah, is that not the what's the name of it? The Smithsonian Institute.
That's it.
Yes.
Aye. They basically preserve the most iconic
Library of Congress.
Library of Congress, is that it?
That's right.
They can't be, because when you think about it, I mean, it is, we forget, don't we? All of us, we forget it's nearly 50 years old, this movie. And yet I watch it, see different things in it all the time. I still think it's got a freshness about it, and the performances are so energetic and the characters are so distinctive. I just love the thing. But yeah, he did move on from it, and I think that arguably achieved other creative highs, Ian. I'd say, I know you're not a fan of this, but what you were we've spoken a little bit about family, but I think that he lent into it heavily, not just in the audience that he aimed at, particularly as regards the Goonies. Assembling this cast. There's a shot of Richard Donner there filming the Goonies in 1985, and then at a cast reunion, obviously 25 years later. So whether that have been 2010 or something like that. But there are so many photographs. When you research just for 5 minutes, research Richard Donner, there are lots of cast reunion pictures of him with various actors. So many quotes from actors who just loved working with this guy, Ian, over and over and over again.
He's great. I mean, I didn't like the Goonies when I first saw it, and I must admit I don't like it now. I have a real problem of listening to the kids. They're all talking at once, and there's some amusing moments in it, and but for me the film didn't work. But no one's perfect, right? Richard Donner made some really great movies, but they say that the thing that people remember Richard Donner mostly for is his booming voice when he's on set. He had this voice that carried.
So getting actors to do various things, to stand here, stand there, remember this, remember that, or to get them in the moment. And that would have been harder still with a cast of mostly very young actors, one would imagine.
Yeah, probably. I would have loved to have been there when he was filming the Goonies and telling him he was making a mistake, but hey, such is life. Well, there you go. But yeah.
Yeah, the Goonies is a film. I think I was a little bit too old for it, but I've always really liked it. And Wendy, you mentioned Lady Hawk earlier on. That's more a fantasy, isn't it? It's quite a straight film, from what I remember. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yes, it is. It's and I have to admit I wasn't particularly like being drawn to fantasy films per se at that time, that particular genre, but there was something about Lady Hawk in just the sensitivity of how it was put together and how it was filmed, and it also had a lot of humor in it. It had a lot of great.
It still had Richard Donner's sort of seam of comedy underneath a little.
Yes, it did. It had a lot of comedic moments in it, particularly with Matthew Broderick. He was the sort of comic relief of the film. But interestingly, when I was looking at IMDb earlier, I was quite surprised to see that one of my favorite authors, Michael Crichton's book, Timeline, was adapted by Donner as well. And I thought, oh my God, because I can remember reading that book, and literally by the time I finished it, I wanted to open it up and read it again. So I had forgotten actually that they made a film of that book with everything else that goes on. So it's actually rekindled my interest in that story again, and I'll have to dig up that film Timeline and have a watch.
Yeah, these are his two. We've got them on screen now. These are Donner's two last films. I think Timeline was around 2001, 2002 with the late Paul Walker, and then 16 Blocks in 2006. Ian, you mentioned that earlier on with Bruce Willis there and Mo Def. I only ever saw that film once. I can't remember a great deal about it. I'm definitely going to revisit it after I've heard so many good things about it the last 24 hours.
Well, it's incredibly well directed. I mean, I just remind you of the scene when he goes into the shop to buy drink. Bruce Willis goes to the shop to buy the drink and leaves what's his name? The black guy that he's meant to be protecting in the car. And then you have that scene in it where the guy knocks. Yeah, what's his name? Mos Def.
Mos Def.
When there's the guy that knocks on the window and he tells him to roll the window down and he wouldn't, and he gets his gun out and then he gets shot. And then all that whole scene that was done in slow motion with the bullet moving and stuff like that. So well directed as the camera goes around Bruce Willis as he's coming to his senses, that bullets are coming towards him and stuff. And then suddenly it just goes in normal motion, and then he's there near the car and stuff like that. That scene is so well directed, and not a lot of people talk about that directional point in that movie. And that's just one of many of the fantastic points in 16 Blocks. 16 Blocks is, I think I've seen that film about 5 times. I think I saw it twice in the cinema because I liked it so much, and I've seen it about 5 times on DVD. And I just finished watching it before this on Amazon. So I just love the film. I think the film is just a really good thriller. The only thing that spoils it is Bruce Willis's false stomach, because sometimes you see him running around and you see his stomach moving up and down and stuff. It's moved there and it's moved there.
So,
but apart from that, it's a great movie.
Superman aside, Ian, is that your favourite of Donner's?
One of my favourites. That and Lethal Weapon 1. Superman #1 and Omen #2. Lethal Weapon 3 and 16 Blocks 4. For me, anyway. For me.
Yeah, that's it, because we had to get there really. If Richard Donner has a franchise, then it's arguably this that he's most identified with. This is the Lethal Weapon series, which ran from 1988 until around when was the final film? About 1998, something like that. It was a good 10 years.
Yeah, one film too many. One film too many, unfortunately.
Well, interestingly, if I may, Dan, the story I was going to mention earlier, I'm a graphic designer, and I work for a company where we also have a small film crew. And we were kind of sort of filming a commercial last Thursday. And another gentleman I work with, we were talking about Richard Donner. We were talking about the Lethal Weapon series. And he was like, well, I don't know about if there was going to be a 5. And I said, well, yes, it's been greenlit.
Yeah.
And Mel Gibson and Danny Glover and Rene Russo, they were all on board, and they've been talking about it for the past couple of years. And then I get my phone out, and I'm like looking at a couple of things, and I'm like, well, yes, Chris, it's definitely been greenlit. And then I say to him, well, he better be hurrying up because he's not getting any younger.
Oh no.
And now, of course, this is tragic in itself, but for some odd reason, I have some kind of, and I don't necessarily believe, I personally don't necessarily, I say I don't believe, but secretly I do. I believe in extrasensory perception. But the odd thing is my X-Men power is unwittingly, unknowingly being aware that a celebrity is going to die just by mentioning them. And then a week later,
sense was tingling.
Poof, yes. That's a good way to put it. My spider sense was tingling. I did it with Michael Clark Duncan. I've done it with several others. And when my wife told me, I went, oh no. And so then I'm like, hey, Chris, guess what? And he was like, yeah, I heard. He knows about my curse.
Richard, it is right. Richard Donner was adamant that he was going to direct a 5th Lethal Weapon film, PJ. And you know what? I actually believed him. He was one of the only people I could think of. When they say they're going to do something in their late 80s, I believe that he could do it. I still believe that Brian Blessed will probably go to Mars. Was there scope for a 5th film of this? But you couldn't help but admire Richard Donner's balls, could you?
I'd watch it.
I think there was, and I think Richard Donner would have treated them right because as I said, if you see what he did with Superman, it's very easy to actually do this movie and have 2 young bucks under the tuition of Riggs and Murtaugh, and then make them so they can make another franchise. But I don't think Donner wanted to do that. I think Donner wanted Glover and Gibson to be the age that they were and create a story around them. And I think that would have been great.
Ending to the franchise rather than a reboot of the franchise.
I mean, the character of Murtaugh would have definitely been too old for this shit, as he actually turned 50 in the first film.
And here we have another picture.
We were all thinking it.
And we have another picture with the cast, all laughing and joking. Again, this is quite a common thing I'm seeing with Richard Donner, but I do think that's a lovely picture of him with the 2 guys, the 2 main guys there from Lethal Weapon. With the first film, when that came out, again, I'd say, okay, probably it wasn't a hit on Superman scale, but culture, as regards pop culture, it wasn't far off, was it, Keith? You're dressed as Martin Riggs, sort of 50% this evening, aren't you?
Yeah, no, I love the first 3 Lethal Weapon films. I must admit, when Lethal Weapon 4 came out, I thought it jumped the shark a little bit with that one. But
do you have your gold pen, Keith?
But what? Say again. What?
You have your gold pen.
Yeah, the gold pen.
I'm sorry.
It's under the chair.
It's under the chair. Yeah. She was not a great cleaner. But those films, and like I said earlier, the sense of family with those films, as well as the action and spectacle, and absolutely the director's cut, which Scott mentioned earlier, was those were great. I've always had those on, originally VHS and then DVD and Blu-ray, but those films are amongst my favorite from that era. Big fan of them. So I love the Lethal Weapon franchise.
There's not many spaceships in it, Keith, but I have to say I'm not one for cop movies generally, Mike, but there's something about these films. I think it's probably, again, like we were saying about the cast. I think a cast of Superman. I think it's the same with the cast of these. It's the chemistry. That's why I enjoy them so much.
Well, see, the Lethal Weapons, they gave me one character which I was surprised I enjoyed. Joe Pesci. I don't like nihilistic. I'm not a great gangster movie fan.
Yeah.
After seeing him in the Goodfellas and stuff like that, and then seeing him in Lethal Weapon, I thought he's really good. Then my cousin Vinny, and it was the Lethal Weapon that made me think, wow, I need to see more of his stuff, not just the gangster movies where he's a psycho. And it was because he actually was directed in such a way that you could see, I can believe that type of guy exists. He's out there. Yep. And he just was, and that's what I liked about it.
Were you going to say, Wendy?
I do like some weird movies, but a lot of my Donner movies. I love Maverick. I love Scrooged, Goonies.
Scrooge is a good
I'm
one.
glad you mentioned that. I think it would have been criminal. It would have been criminal for us to do a stream about Richard Donner and not talk a little bit about Scrooge, because here we have. I think that with the exception of Superman, I think there was probably more special effects and lots of prosthetics, Terry. All stuff done in camera in Scrooge, wasn't there? It's a very impressive film.
Oh, yeah. And again, it speaks to Donner's competence in dealing with, as PJ just said, getting comedy out of, someone like Joe Pesci, who was known as a sort of straight actor kind of thing in the gangster things, and then turning his hand to a modern day retelling of A Christmas Carol with Bill Murray. It's like, there's nothing he couldn't do and do well. So, you got to take your hat off to him like that. And effects films usually, even to modern day directors, sometimes if they knows a lot of effects, they either get a second unit to do it, or they're terrified by the prospect of it, because to get your
I had a hard time making this film though, because the ending was completely made up on the spot, and their dialogue that came out of Bill Murray's mouth was made up on the spot as well. The thing about Richard Donner that people don't realize is that he's good at dealing with things that are uncontrollable. Like, for instance, when he was making Lethal Weapon 2, he read the script and he was like, they shot the beginning bit. I can't remember what it was, but then when he was looking at the edit, he thought, why don't we just come straight into the action? So when you see Lethal Weapon 2, you have the credits and then it zooms into the shot and you're straight into the action. And that's how he started that one. And the thing with Scrooge is that they didn't really have an ending. So because he's so knowledgeable and so such a and knows his craft very well, he allowed Bill Murray just to talk at the ending, and that was the ending basically. So,
yeah. I watched this film again at the Christmas Just Gone, and the ending seriously doesn't work for me. No. I'm not sure what it is. I think even somebody, look, I'm a gobshite. It takes one to know one. I think Bill was slightly out of his depth, even
probably was
gobshite terms.
Drunk.
Being given a film of that size to kind of improvise an ending to a big budget movie like that, and such an affecting story as well. But hey, more experimentation from Richard Donner, the fearless Richard Donner.
And how many folks were in that movie that were in the Lethal Weapon series?
Big cast.
Tons.
Oh yeah.
Well, he did sort of re-employ actors over and over again, sometimes in cameos, and I'm thinking of Margot Kidder in Maverick in particular, and just over and over in those bigger roles. I mean, the making Maverick with Mel Gibson again, I think that you're right, Keith. I think that the real reason why he did that, he wants to muck about with his mate and play cowboys and Indians.
Yeah,
why not?
Why not?
Yeah,
and it was cool to get James Garner in there as well,
Yes.
who was obviously the original Maverick. So,
and from what you were saying, Mike, he started out doing westerns on TV, sort of. His big part of Have Gun Will Travel, was that a western?
Well, Western.
He worked on, again, Wanted Dead or Alive with Steve McQueen, which I loved. Like The Rifleman, a lot of those, and a few episodes of what I will argue with anyone all day long that is the greatest TV western ever, Have Gun Will Travel. So he definitely had a hand in some westerns. Yes,
he did a couple of the
Kojak as well,
didn't he?
Kojak, yes.
Kojak. See, I was surprised when I actually looked at some of his early stuff. I was really surprised at the Banana Splits. I must admit, I was very surprised.
I love
the Banana Splits. Basically, I grew up with them.
Well, yeah, because that was around the time, not far from the time when he did the Omen, and he's working on Banana Splits for Sid and Marty Krofft. I don't know.
Before we move on, I just want to say, Scott, I understand that you've got to pop off now.
Yes, I have a short drive ahead of me.
Is there one last Richard Donner memory that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I remember seeing the Scrooged at the cinema, and a couple of buddies of mine and I were like, let's go see Scrooged. I'm like, okay. And I remember, just as you said at the very end of the film, there they are. They start singing, and everything's all happy. And I'm like, what's going on here? It was kind of a non-ending, but at the same time, it was a full theater, and I had never really experienced being at a place where the entire theater was completely packed. Not only were we having a great time, but when you left the theater, even though it was a non-ending to a film, everyone had a smile on their face.
Yeah.
And there I am with two adult, almost adult. We were 17 at the time, friends, and and we're walking out of this theater, and it's Christmas time, and the hustle and bustle and everybody being cranky, but everyone was happy. We were all leaving. We all had a great time. And I think that was something that Richard Donner always wanted to make sure that when you entered that theater and you left, you took something with you that you were going to remember.
Yeah.
And there are so many directors out there now who, especially now that they're after the fast buck. How much can I get out of you? How much can I get out of you? If you're putting out quality, and if you're going to put something in someone's memory and in their heart, something is going to stay with them, and you're going to keep returning.
Yeah.
Nicely put. Nicely put.
Excellent. So before you go, just remind us, what's the name of your YouTube channel and what do you talk about on there?
It is the Game Closet. It's a brand new channel. I will show you my little icon here real quick. Game Closet with Dr.
Okay.
Scott. And mainly, there's a lot of gaming channels out there that people may have heard of. I mean, they're of course one of the largest. Metal Jesus Rocks. There used to be Classic Game Room, and there's just something missing, and that is a little bit of comedy. I don't necessarily dwell too much on the game itself, as I almost make it a Saturday Night Live version of having fun with games, and that's what I want everybody to do. Have a good time. If you like gaming, fine. If you don't like gaming, fine. But I want to make you laugh, and that's all I want to do.
Good man. Well, thanks for joining us. We hope to have you back at some point in the near future to talk about some more movies or TV or whatever else. But yeah, well done, and we'll speak to you later.
And thank you all for being so gracious. Have a great evening, because I know it's later there than it is here. But thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah.
Here's buddy. Take care.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Ta-da.
Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.
And there we're 7.
Yeah. So, here we are. 2021, another legend has left us. I'd say that at the moment, obviously cinema, we're coming out of the pandemic, and the shape of blockbuster cinema going forward looks a little bit uncertain. And characters like Richard Donner, PJ, are in short measure, aren't they? But what do you think? What do you think his lasting legacy will be? It's not just about Superman, is it? Do you think his name will transcend all of that in time?
I think yes. I suppose the easiest way to think about it is the characters he created are characters we remember for good reason. Because you were talking earlier about the original draft of the movie was going to be too long, and it was a very campy. So we're remembering Superman for the icon he is. We're not remembering Superman for nipples in the batsuit type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. We're remembering.
It never really went south on his watch, did it?
But I think that's what we're going to remember him for, because he created so many good characters that, love them or hate them. Chunk from the Goonies. You're talking about Bill Murray's Scrooge. I've got a passion for disliking reboots, reimaginings, but Scrooge I liked a lot. Yeah, it's a wee bit at the end, it sort of fizzles, but it doesn't fizzle to the point you're going, it fizzles to the point you still got a smile on your face because it's a happy ending for a Christmas movie. I was surprised and enjoyed it because it was a reimagining, reboot, remake. I'm very particular with those type of things, but I think his characters he creates are memorable, and that's what we're going to remember.
Yeah. I think I'm
so glad we did this stream. We're about to lose you as well, aren't we, Wendy? But which Richard Donner film do you think you're going to rush and rewatch at the earliest opportunity after this conversation?
Oh, I'm going to have to go with the Goonies, because it is such a part of my... It was just such a big part of my enjoyment of that time of my life. And it's yes. I am also going to look up the film that you were mentioning, Ian. Is it 16?
16 blocks. 16 blocks.
I'm definitely going to check that one out, because that just sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
And I just completely, that was off my radar completely. I hadn't even realized what it was until tonight, that it was out there. So I'm definitely going to have a look at that as well.
Our work here is done, Ian. Our work here is done. Thank you for joining us, Wendy. So you haven't got your own channel at the moment, but we expect to see you popping up on various things. We'd love to have you back here on the Spacebook.
She's on Saturday in my channel.
Hopefully next time we speak, it will be slightly happier circumstances. But thanks for joining us, Wendy. Good night.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye, Wendy.
Very much. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Wendy.
We talk about the little things, the little nuggets that we don't know about, Terry. Those little nuggets. Something I'd forgotten was Richard Donner's later producer credits on another superhero series. Thinking of the X-Men. The X-Men, apparently, this was another series that was kind of in development hell for a good 5 years before. But this would never have happened without Richard Donner. And I think, is it his daughter, Lauren Schuler Donner? Or
it's his
I can't
wife.
remember. Oh, it's his wife.
Yeah.
They worked extensively. On this, on making the X-Men happen, and that I'd say, I'm not going to count Blade because it was a superhero movie, but it wasn't. But I think the X-Men was the next most important superhero movie after Burton's Batman, wasn't it? And there's Donner again in the mix.
Yeah, but unfortunately, remember he also did X-Men Wolverine.
Yeah, but he remained a producer, and I think on all of the films up to that point. I think from memory, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, he was a producer.
I do remember watching the X-Men and the scene where we first meet Wolverine, and I think he produced it. I mean, him and his wife produced it very well. It tried to be as close to the comics as possible. Obviously, there was things they couldn't do from the comics, but I just remember seeing his name when I was watching the movie, thinking, Donner's got a hand in this too. So yeah.
Because he will have done, even though Bryan Singer was the director. I think I detect some of that verisimilitude in there as well, Keith.
Yes. No, absolutely. It was, he was very instrumental in the development of that first film. And if you look at that first film was very much set in the real world. It had a lot of realism to it, even though mutants existed, etc. And he definitely had a big hand in the first film, and I think he remained a producer right the way up to Logan.
Really? That long?
Yeah,
yes,
he did.
Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned this, because I was going to say earlier, about his producing work. He did this. He did Tales from the Crypt. He did, he did quite a lot of producing as well as some really great directing. So, what a sad loss to the entertainment industry. But there you go.
I'll tell you what's great about Richard Donner. That his legacy. Now we know that he was responsible for Superman the movie. We know that he got stabbed in the back, and we know that out of all the Superman films with Chris Reeves in, the first one was the best one. If it could have went the other way, where the Sorkinds were praised for Superman rather than Richard Donner himself. Do you know what I mean? So I'm happy about that, definitely.
I think his name and attached to that character in that film, there are people out there who probably couldn't name with the way that we know that Spielberg made E.T. And that Spielberg made Jaws. There's something somehow which Donner to a lot of people is slightly under the radar.
He is,
But to anybody, anybody entrenched in popular culture the way that we all are.
And I think also the way Donner used to do what Hitchcock used to do, where he used to just pop in occasionally to his movies.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah, he was in Superman. He was in Superman the movie.
Who was in Superman, Pete? Who was in Superman, Pete?
The scene got cut out.
Man in Street.
It got cut out. But it's
He
in
got
the
cut
extended.
He got cut out, Mike.
He cut himself out. But
Yeah.
it's in the extended edition. He's the guy when they're after all the early super deeds that when after their first appearance in there, next to a window watching all of these TV screens from the news, and a guy says to Clark Kent, "And that'll be the day, huh?" Well, he says, "Excuse me, that'll be the day when a guy can fly, right?" He goes, "I don't know. You'd be surprised." That was Just said that to him.
And he played the policeman in the Goonies and stuff like that. And he was even one of the card players in Maverick. He's just wee bits and pieces. I think very Alfred Hitchcock. He just a wee teeny cameo, uncredited mostly, but he usually does appear in them.
He was also a loyal friend. His buddy Steve Can was in every single movie he made. Apparently, no one ever remembers him.
Yes,
he was in Superman.
No, I do remember him.
Oh, you remember? Yeah, that guy was. He played Captain Ed Murphy in the Lethal Weapon.
Yes, he did. He did. Yes.
Really? I should go and look him up.
Yeah, he's been in every one of his movies.
Every one of them. It must be Buds.
And Richard Donner actually does make a little cameo as a passerby in Superman 2 as well, when they're leaving the diner, when they're in the snow and they leave the diner. Richard Donner actually walks past, and it's quite funny because if you on the audio commentary, he's saying that Lester's team and the Soul Kinds and all this were saying that he didn't film that part of the film, and he's like, how am I an extra in the scene if I didn't film that part? Then he actually points that out in the commentary. He's like, look, I'm right there, so I was obviously around filming this part, right?
But that's what I'm so happy about, that his name was, his name wasn't shoved under the mat. Do you know what I mean? Now everybody knows that those people were idiots to let this man go, and obviously he had the vision. They should have stuck that, because I as a kid I liked Superman too, but when I look at it now, it's not a very good movie at all in my opinion. But if Richard Donner was in charge of Superman 2, you can bet your bottom dollar that film would have been great. In
1981, I was so disappointed. I walked out of that theater in denial. No way could this movie be bad. I waited 3 years. No way. I tried, denied it. You couldn't tell me it was bad, but I went back the next day twice, and I'm like, I had to face it. I hate Superman 2. The Lester cut.
I think a set of streams about the Superman movies could well be coming up. I think the TV version of Superman the movie might be the next thing that I watch. But Terry, which is the next Richard Donner film that you're going to watch? Are you going to go back and rewatch something this week?
I think 16 Blocks is I totally admit, completely under my radar. Didn't know it existed. Because it's so sort of recent for Bruce Willis, and you kind of think that Bruce Willis in latter films phones it in. But I will definitely check out 16 Blocks at some point. I think for me, probably again, Superman 1, you can't go wrong with that. And it has, for me, you can ask most people. I mean, if I asked any of you guys now what your favorite Star Wars original trilogy film would be, hands up, who would say Empire?
Yay. Right here.
Right. Now, I always say A New Hope, because
it's A New Hope for me.
Sorry, I just say Star Wars. I don't call it A New Hope.
Exactly, yeah. But I prefer the first one because of, or the fourth one, because of the freshness, and that's what Superman as well. It's the introduction to it. I mean, yes, Empire has got a lot of good things about it, and it is a technically and a more grown-up film, etc. But there's a freshness about the new thing that first just hits, to make this giant franchise work. And Donner's Superman still has that freshness, and straight out of a comic book. But it's not like there's nothing that says a comic book has to be silly, campy or whatever. Because when you're reading a comic book, no matter how old you are, this is dead serious to you. It doesn't matter that it's drawn and it speaks
it's
bubbles.
the most serious thing in the world.
It's like a movie going straight into your brain. And, he could have done... do you remember the Ang Lee Hulk film where they had the split screen?
That was
such a director's cut. Got rid of all those split screen things and all that. It might have been a little better, but that was a horrible idea. And they were saying, that was because we want to split the screen to get some more information in at once. And I'm like, no, that was to make it look like the panels of a comic book, which was awful.
Stupid.
But they didn't do that with Donner's Superman. It was like, okay, it comes from a thing, but let's give you the experience that you would have had in your mind as you're reading a comic book rather than what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And, again, his body of work reinforced all his decisions. And the very fact, like they said earlier, that they called him up to oversee X-Men, which was a huge Marvel deal at the time. It was like, now we're dealing with one of the Marvel's biggest properties here. Say, who do we know who could possibly,
make it happen?
And someone went, Dick Donner, gotta be. And obviously, I'm a big fan of his kebabs.
Me too. So when he's not doing stand-up, Terry, what's the name of your YouTube channel again, and where can people see all
my
the
YouTube
various
channel is
things you
called
do?
Terry on Tuesday, and I do general ramblings, but usually it's to do with.
Do you do that on Wednesday?
Occasionally, when I'm drinking on Tuesday night, I end up doing it on Wednesday. No, but I generally at the moment I'm covering prop and costume building, film stuff. I'm currently building a full-size Dalek, a TARDIS, and a Marvin the Paranoid android.
Yeah.
All three
I'm
at the
so
same
jealous.
time.
I used to build bits and pieces for my own, but I can't do it anymore.
Oh dear.
No dexterity.
RSI.
I did my whole Judge Dredd outfit. Here you go. But
Fantastic.
So PJ, I have to ask you too. What's the film you're going to go and rewatch at the nearest available opportunity from the Donna back
Goonies.
catalog? You're going for the Goonies. Oh, you came in on that, didn't you? Yeah.
The Goonies, Superman, Maverick, and I'm going to try that Lady Hawk because I've not seen it.
Great film.
Well, I don't recognise the name. Somebody might describe it, and I would go, recognise it, but I don't recognise the name of it.
It's a modest film, considering it's an 80s fantasy. It's not, let's put it this way, it's not Legend. It's not Ridley Scott's Legend. It's not as audacious as that. But you really get into the characters. So, but you're on YouTube now too. You've got your own channel, haven't you? Do you want to tell us what that's called and where people can find it?
It's PJ Maybe. Basically, I do classic TV movies when I'm not just talking geeky stuff. But in effect, a Wednesday I do Red Dwarf at the moment. I'm doing
excellent.
And a Saturday I'm just doing a panel, just talking about general geeky stuff. I try to do it with movies, but that means everybody's got homework, and I don't like homework.
You don't.
I do like watching movies, and my TV's on near enough every moment. I'm like, I've got something on watching.
Absolutely fantastic.
I do enjoy. Unfortunately, this week I've been caught up with YouTube, and I've been watching everybody's channels that I forgot to do my homework.
Well, thanks for joining us for this one. We'd love to have you back again too. Chris Persia has been in the chat with us the full length of this show so far, adding people's channels, showing the punters where they can find everybody. So thank you, Chris. I don't say this often enough. Thank you for everything that you do with getting all these links out to people. That's really kind of you. Keith, yourself, what are you gonna rewatch? I see you've got them all lined up behind you. You're spot for choice, man. You're spot for choice. What's next?
Well, I mean, now Ian said that 16 Blocks is on Amazon. I'm definitely gonna revisit that. Timeline, I'm quite intrigued to revisit as well, because I think I only saw that the once. And I have to say, I know this won't be popular, but a bit of a guilty pleasure actually is I don't mind his 1995 film Assassins, which starred Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, Julianne
Moore. What a brave man you are!
Hey, that's the same year as Judge Dredd came out for Stallone, But I'm probably going to.
I knew you'd say that.
Happy 75th birthday, Stallone. We should say that too. Yeah.
I'm probably going to review this as well soon on the channel. The Superman anthology. It's a bit of a minefield, actually. The whole Superman on media. No, but it really is. So it'll be a perfect one for the channel, and obviously a respectful thing to do now as well. So
And Keith is a regular here on the Spacebook channel. That's why he's got his own little ticker there. Well, I'll get some more tickers for people as they come onto the streams in future. But so you can hear Home Media Minefield is your YouTube channel, isn't it? But you're a podcaster too, aren't you, Keith? So what else is going on wherever? Give people a quick rundown.
Yep. So obviously Home Media Minefield. We've got live streams and we discuss movies, etc. But the main focus is obviously on Blu-ray 4K releases. We do unboxings, reviews, comparisons, all of that sort of stuff. There's also a podcast, which is Let's See What's Out There, LSWOT cast on all good podcatchers. You can find that. Dan's been on a few episodes, and Ian a lot of episodes. So check out that work there. And if you want to see any of my short films, If you go to British Isles, that's EYLES, as in my last name. There's a YouTube channel there with half a dozen short films that I've made. So please check those out, and any feedback is welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you for joining us, Keith. And Mike, yourself, mate, what are you going to race back to your DVD player, or have you still got a VHS machine, did you say?
I don't know. I have plenty of the tapes, but no player anymore for those. But I watched the Blu-ray of the 3-hour some odd edition of the Donner, the extended cut, not the extended cut they call it. So I don't know. I love a lot of these films. I might go back and watch the Donner cut. It's been a while since I watched Superman 2. It's been a while since I've watched that. Because that movie helped me come to peace with it a little bit after not liking the Lester cut so much.
Yeah.
But I love the Lethal Weapon films, of course.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm going to watch. I think I'm going to go to Lethal Weapon because I haven't seen it for such a long time. And just looking back at stills yesterday when the story broke that Richard had passed, because I loved the Lethal Weapon TV show that they made a few years ago. But now that's been over a little while. And so that's kind of left me, and I'm ready to see the film again. So I think I'll go and watch the first film and see how I get on with them. But Mike, we mentioned your channel earlier on in the podcasting that you do, but give people the sales pitch now. Go on.
I'm all over the very busy week. Tonight I'll be on with Loki in the game for the Comic Book Roundtable, but that's on Eris's channel. The wonderful.
Don't plug anybody else's channel, man.
Well, I'm part of that group. But tomorrow I'm on the special Iconicon. It's a virtual convention that my retro blasting friends are putting together, and it is on my channel. I'm doing one of the many panels. Tomorrow night, it'll be Comic Shops of the 80s, which I'll be running a panel on my channel. Then I'll be throughout the week sitting on a few panels for them, like one of British TV of the 80s. Yes, because I'm British. Because I'm British. I'm not, so I'm speaking for you guys. Sorry, but I'm on there.
Colonial.
I need to see that one.
I promise to put on my fake accent and be the best I can. Another panel will be about James Bond films. That will be Friday of the 80s. This is a very 80s centric virtual con.
Wow.
Retro blasting is all about the 80s, toys, cartoons, and films. And then Saturday, they for some reason want me on a Return of the Jedi panel, which I've warned them about. But I'm and of course every Saturday night, the wonderful Lauren Briggs and I are reviewing all of Star Trek 66 through 05 only, the real stuff. And we just finished with the original cast films after doing the animated series and original series. So we're starting on TNG now this week. So
awesome.
And then
got your work cut out for you.
A long journey ahead of them. Yes. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us again, Mike. We've had you on a few shows now. Always a different subject, but I know that you're into all sorts of things, so I know you'll always have something to say.
Absolutely. I thank you so much, Dan. And it's a pleasure being with all these wonderful gentlemen and yourself. You're too kind, sir. And this is a great channel. Thank you so much. And R.I.P. Richard Donner. And thank you, Richard Donner.
Thank you, Richard Donner. Ian, this was your sort of idea. Yours and our friend Matt Pott, who couldn't join us tonight. He's down under. He's working, the poor man. But I hope you're out there, Matt, watching later on, because he sort of instigated all of this. But yeah, I mean, we've got to give you the final word on Richard Donner here on the Spacebook. Obviously, it's still probably sinking in that he's no longer with us, isn't it?
Yeah, as I said, I've always been a fan. I'm not saying that because he's gone. A lot of people, when somebody's gone, like, say, oh, he was great. But then, before they died, there was no mention of them. Suddenly, when somebody dies, you mention them a lot. But for me, as everybody knows, that every time I mention famous directors, Donner was always in there. And I was a huge, I still am a huge fan of Donner. And I recognized his talent a long time before a lot of people recognize his talent. Personally, I think, throughout the people that I know in my circle of geeks, because he was never mentioned, but I always mentioned Donner. So I personally think that Donner's films will be remembered way into the future and beyond my lifetime, put it that way. And if he was here right now, I would say to him, thank you for all the joy that I have experienced in all those films that you've made. Well, apart from Goonies, of course, but apart from Goonies, all the films most of the films that he's made, he's given me joy, and that's a precious thing to give to someone. So there you go.
Do you love to hate the Goonies? There you go. There's your
No, I
joy.
don't. You know, I don't hate it. I just didn't like it. That's all. That's the thing. But I you know, whatever.
But you're not alone, sir. I took a date to it, and I didn't even like Lady Hawk. Lady Hawk came out the same year. I didn't like either one of them.
All right.
Sorry,
but Richard Donner, you know, rest in peace, pal.
He tried all those different things. Rest in peace, Richard Donner. I think that even though it's been, it's strange when a character. I mean, it's 91. How surprised can we be?
He's still got his hair.
I said the same. I said the same when Sean Connery passed away last autumn. I was just as shocked by that, and yet again, it was another man getting up there in years. You think they're always going to be around, particularly when they tell you they're going to, they've got all these different projects that they want to direct. But we're sad that you never got to make Lethal Weapon 5, Richard Donner, but we're so happy for all the films that you did make us. We're still going to be watching them probably for the rest of our lives. That wraps us up, I think. Gentlemen, thanks for sharing in this. I won't say sharing our grief, because we've had a lot of fun this evening. I think that's what Richard Donner would have wanted, and I hope you have too out there watching. I think we shall leave you on a... Well, first of all, we're going to recommend that you go and watch the Richard Donner film of your choice later this week. But it's important that we leave you with a picture of the great director doing what he did best, where he was happiest, and where he would, I think where all those casts who are giving tributes to him now, Ian, that all the obituaries are all coming out, and even from people like William Shatner, I noticed he's published one today, throughout his career, coming forward and saying how much they enjoyed working with this guy. So let's leave you with a picture of Richard Donner doing what he did best, and we'll say, good night. Come back to the channel. There's more content. There's more playlists, movies, TV, sci-fi, fantasy, all that malarkey. But I think, we'll just close out with this picture of Richard Donner, the great director at work.
Yeah, fantastic, man. Bye, everybody.
Bye,
everyone.